This is the voice of Killer Cross. Right about now. We're about to take it to the max.
This is the pretty badass Kelly Klein telling you to turn it to 11 and take it to the max.
Hey everybody, it's the interview queen Alicia Atute here, and you are currently listening to the Max Wrestling Podcast. It's time to take it to the max.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Madhouse.
Charismatic enigma, Jeff Hardy. Welcome to the Madhouse.
He is the former host of Sunday Segue Wrestling Podcast, once under the tutelage of Bill Apter. Today he is breaking barriers with Dadcast, former two-time Knowledge Champion and Iron Bank winner, Kinny Killa.
Welcome to another edition of Max Wrestling in the Hot Seat. I am Mike Larkin. I am your host, the first ever Triple Crown champion in Max Wrestling history, fellow Max Wrestling captain, a podcast machine, a podcaster who loves what he does. And joining me today for a special edition of In the Hot Seat is none other than former two-time Knowledge Champion, the host of Sunday Segue, 2019 Iron Bank winner, host of Dadcast With The Mandem, and friggin' my buddy, the one man with one half an Instagram, the man of many names, Mr. Kinny Killa. Kenny, it feels good to be talking to you again. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Likewise, Mike. Thanks for having me on. Your friendly brother from across the pond, you know how it is. The one man with half an Instagram, Kinny Killa, back on the airwaves.
Yes, sir. And it's great to have you back on the airwaves, man. I think what's great about this is people don't even realize that you have had such an influx and overall effect on our overall talents, whether it be Daz, Butcher, myself. You've inspired and been our Yoda in a way.
Well, I take that moniker, happily, and I'm, you know me. You've known me for a while. I'm always happy to help, and you guys are doing an amazing job. And it's just amazing to see how far you guys have come, especially yourself with interviewing and so on. So yeah, I'm definitely proud of you guys and the things that you guys have done.
Thank you. And we will touch upon this in this show, but yes, and I have to touch upon this because, well, we'll discuss this first and then we'll bounce around here, but you will be back at Trivia Takeover in June. You will be a part of the Knowledge Championship bout with current champion Moses Marquez defending against yourself, the Phoenix, Ella J, newcomer from a Wrestling Gal podcast, and we got one more spot to fill, and just for the record, no, it is not me, since I am the Iron Bank winner this year. So I look forward to seeing you back in the Knowledge Championship hunt, because you won the inaugural Knowledge Championship back at Trivia Takeover in 2016, so it is your event, Kenny.
Yeah, well, I like to think so. I mean, as time has gone on, trivia gets harder. I'm an old school nut. I'm a 90s kid, so if you going up to at least 2006, that's my strength. Anything post that is a bit sketchy, but it's I'm looking forward to it, man. June couldn't come any sooner.
Well, I gotta say this: if you do happen to win, you will be the first ever 3-time Knowledge Champion.
Well, that would be a nice moniker to have, definitely. But yeah, I'm just, I know for a fact if I win, I can feel an Iron Bank cashing in, coming in shortly from yourself.
You're welcome. But no, well, that's the thing with that, man. Is it's so funny because if you look at the history of Iron Bank, first it was Phoenix, then it's you, now it's me. So I mean, the former Knowledge champions all win in Iron Bank, so it's a nice little feel to it. It's very cool. But yeah, no, I think what's great about it is it's great to have you back, because when you think of the Knowledge Championship, we think of you, we think of me, we think of our reign. Here's the thing, and a lot of people don't even realize, because since we've reintroduced the Promo Championship, we've had Amir and Butcher do their thing from last year. But one of the best builds was Promo Mania 3, you and I. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the rematch that you and I had.
Yeah, we did a lot of back and forth, man, over the years. And it's been a nice kind of thing to do, especially whereas on Sunday Segue we used to do loads of different trivia. So for that to kind of carry on, and then the promo stuff, and it's just been such a nice thing to kind of be involved in and see how it's involved and new people being involved.
Of course, and I gotta say this, and okay, I don't know if you remember this, but this is where we bounce around here. So when I first started getting into podcasting in like the summer of 2015, you were like the first person I came in contact with. But I think my first initiation, and I know you wanted me on the show and we had discussed this, but I'm like, Kenny, I got to set up Skype and stuff. And I'll be honest with you. The thing was, at the time, I had a lot of family stuff going on. And my grandmother, unfortunately, was sick. And my aunt was too. My aunt had actually passed in 2016. So I'm like, let me get my head right and get on this. But I got to say, once everything, I got through everything. One of my greatest accomplishments, I think, with podcasting is I got to do your show, Sunday Segue. And man, I remember doing a Macho Man impression, doing some fun trivia, naming some WCW champions. We had a lot of fun on that show. So I could say one of my best moments was being on Sunday Segue.
Oh man, Sunday Segue is such a such a blur because it was 4 years strong, and it's evolved so much over the 4 years, and the countless of episodes and the countless of people that we had on. And I remember when I decided to kind of get in touch with you, and at that time we were looking for more people, new people from, especially from across the pond and different areas of the states. So it was nice to have someone who was very knowledgeable along with myself, especially with the business, how it was at that time. So yeah, it was a welcome addition to have you as part of the group.
Oh man, and please, you know what it is too? Like, again, just dipping your toe into podcasting. And I mean, for me, Max Wrestling was just starting at the time, but I was always curious because I remember seeing a lot of your stuff with Daz featured your interview with DDP in the magazines, and we'll talk about your guests in a sec. But man, I gotta ask you, how did you even get involved with Max Wrestling? Because like I said, you, Daz, we've all been tight for like X amount of years, so I was always curious to know how you got involved with Max Wrestling.
So Sunday Segue. So we, I prided myself on making sure that we got in contact with as many people as possible. We used the podcast to allow other wrestling fans who may have that stigma where they're the only person in their friendship group that likes wrestling, who wants to meet other like-minded people, to just shoot the breeze and talk wrestling. And I always looked on Twitter, and I was always looking at who was around and what people were doing and whether they were given an opportunity. And I came across Daz, and I saw that he was, he was interested in wrestling. He was over here because I was doing a lot of stuff with people both over here and across the pond. And I saw the magazine that he was doing, and I just thought, oh, this is cool. I haven't seen anything like this, not over here in the UK. And, I thought, let me give him a shout and see if he's interested in coming, coming on the show, and seeing if we can have some form of a partnership. And, he answered the call. I know he was a bit apprehensive at first, but he answered the call, came on to the show. And we then went on to form a partnership where we would promote the magazine. And then it kind of, I kind of came up with the idea that we were able to boost Max Wrestling magazine, boost our show as well by having wrestlers, interviewing wrestlers. And the thing is, with the interviewing wrestlers, it was something that I wanted to do to kind of progress the show and improve the show and add segments in. And it took me a while to figure out the best way to do that. And one of those things was to have Max Wrestling offer a centerfold kind of spread for the wrestlers, which would give them an incentive to, come on the show and have an interview. And it just worked perfectly. And having a kind of independent, magazine, and it was an online magazine. People just were more interested than me just kind of flat calling them and seeing if they were interested. So, and it just took off from there. Because of that partnership, we were able to interview countless of wrestlers. So, yeah, man, that's how Max Wrestling and Sunday Segue kind of got involved, and how I, got introduced to Daz.
I think what's great about that time too is I remember coming, and at the time it was known as the Swerve Talk Network. Now we got the Corner Network. I know, but yeah, what's interesting about that is too, it's amazing just to see all these podcasts being on that particular platform. And like I said, one of my things about you is like when I first did a show with you, and I think a lot of people don't realize. So when you were the Knowledge Champion, and I first started doing stuff with Max, my first actual special was Promo Series 2016, and the first ever time you and I went head to head, I think it it was a draw. And then 2017 came around, I started my reign, and then you beat me, then I beat you. So I always thought of it like this. Like you and I, or Phoenix and I, were always going to be attached at the hip, and I like that because, and Daz and I even say, because you two were my biggest competition. So that's why I always enjoyed like being around you, besides just the fact that you were an amazing guy. But I always appreciated your knowledge for professional wrestling, and I always thought you had one of the best minds.
Yeah, likewise with yourself, man. I think it's it's a thing where my mind is like a sponge. So when I like something, I like it, and I'm all the way in. And it was the same with me with wrestling, and I kind of it's weird with the trivia because it means so much to me, wrestling, and growing up watching wrestling, and the love I have for it since was it probably Royal Rumble 91, which is my first kind of pay-per-view which I watched. It's those things are ingrained in your memory. And again, we didn't have cable growing up, so it's we were just tape traded, so that's even more, it was even more etched in my mind, because of that nostalgia and because how hard it was to watch it. So I definitely love the knowledge I have, and I love battling against other people who has similar knowledge to me, because it's just reminds me of great nostalgia.
Now, Kenny, I think this will make you smile because I know we're bouncing around, but you actually made me laugh once you said Royal Rumble 91. Okay, so for those that don't know, since Ella J is one of your opponents of a Wrestling Gal podcast at Trivia Takeover, so for people who are unfamiliar with Ella J, she's relatively new in the podcasting game, Kenny, very much a sweetheart, such a pro in her own right. Dude, she's only 22 years of age. She's the youngest.
Wow.
She's the youngest competitor in the bout, but one of her things, and she goes, it's sad, but I'm like, no, it's actually very peculiar. Her favorite pay-per-view is the Royal Rumble, and she can name every Royal Rumble winner in order.
Nice. I love that. I love that. 22 years old, man, which means what? She was born when?
90,
Uh
97.
90. Oh my God, makes me feel old, man.
I know, right?
97. That's the year I started secondary school. It's, yeah, 97, man. 97. Just when WWE were kind of coming into their own in terms of the Attitude Era, and that was one of Bret Hart's best years, man. Best years. You saw an involvement in his character. So yeah, that year is definitely kind of fond in my memory.
Oh, of course. I mean, the iconic Bret Hart, Steve Austin, Ken Shamrock there. Steve, do you give up? And the whole match at WrestleMania 13. One of the best things of men. Bret Hart and The Undertaker, Bret and Shawn. Hell yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, man. So what's great about you two, and I got to mention this as well, besides the knowledge, besides Sunday Segue, I've always appreciated, because you were talking about me coming as far as like interview wise. I've always like really, and I think you can agree with this, as a podcaster, we love giving people the platform to tell their stories. And us being wrestling fans, and us being people that are so respectful and appreciate professional wrestling, I think you can agree with me. It's always a cool feeling, because when you see people like for instance, with this show, I've had on Killer Cross, we've had on Alicia Toot, and I've interviewed people on the Michael Mike stuff. It's very cool just to say, hey, I've interviewed that person, and they're on TV now. They're in WWE. They're in Impact Wrestling. They're in Ring of Honor. It's just cool to see their progression and know that you had a part in interviewing them and giving them the platform to tell their story.
Oh, dude, I swear down, like that was the best part of Sunday Segue for me, because it was at the time where I was doing it by myself, and it was a time where Daz and Phoenix, yourself, Fame Black, the guys from One Wrestling, and they were integral to helping Sunday Segue kind of move to the next level in terms of having guests. And then when I started to interview wrestlers, it just took Segue to another level, and that was kind of the second half of Sunday Segue, where we was in the latter years and getting into the 200 episodes. And I mean, when I first started kind of interviewing a lot of indie talent, and I mean like your lower level indie talent, as they were at that time, and it was just a really good kind of opportunity to just hone your craft in interview. And so I would interview people like Space Monkey, and interview people from like CCW and things like that. And it was just, it was just a nice kind of learning curve. And like having Hallow Wicked from Chikara and stuff like that, Icarus and all those kind of guys, and starting there, and then deciding, what, it's time to kind of step it up a bit and see if I can go after some other people. And it was like, okay, you have your upper echelon, which is your former WWE guys, and then you have your guys who are on the peripherals, at that time, who are in ROH and things like that, and TNA. And then, it just started getting better and better. And then I started interviewing people like, I think my first big one was when I got Jake the Snake Roberts. That was, for me, that was it. Like, I mean, I don't think there was anyone at the level we were at, because we weren't a big, massive level in terms of podcasting at that time. But I think I can honestly say that I don't think anyone was interviewing the level of talent at that time, in terms of where they are now, and at the level we were. I don't think anyone was doing that. And to have Jake the Snake Roberts as my first one, someone who I grew up and idolized, as a wrestling fan, and who loving heels as well at that time. And it was such a coup for me, and it just gave me the push to kind of go further and further. I know you probably know, when you got that first big one, which you felt was that first big one, it gave you the confidence to go forward.
Man, I'll tell you about that in a sec, but I think if people go back into the Max Wrestling archives, when they see like plugs for Sunday Segue, you will always hear, "This is Jake the Snake Roberts, and you're listening to the Sunday Segue podcast." Trust me.
Oh man.
Yes.
That was another thing, man. That was another thing of trying to make sure I can get each person that I interviewed to do a little, a little snippet, for me to kind of promote and have as a kind of a little promo thing. But I mean, I interviewed some people, man. Like I'm just trying to think. Like I've backed up everything. All my interviews are backed up, so I still got them all. And yeah, I still got them all, and I'm just trying to think in my head. Like I've interviewed Adam. Sorry, carry on.
Oh no, I was gonna say, dude, like DDP, Jake the Snake Roberts, Brian Cage, Donovan Dijak before he's Dominic Dijakovic now. Like you've got a lot of people there.
Yeah, man. Adam Cole, Keith Lee. Who else did I have? I had Damian Slater. I mean, when he came off of the Cruiserweight Classic.
Kenneth Johnson there, I think was in there.
Yeah, I had Brian Kendrick.
Yep.
Oh man, who else did I have?
Did you have Nadia Sapphire? I could be wrong on that. I think Nadia Sapphire.
Yes, I had Nadia. She was one of my first, Nadia Sapphire. Yeah, she was one of my first, man. That was a interesting one.
Flip Gordon.
Yeah, Flip Gordon. Keith. That's when he just started coming up, and that was one of kind of like my last interviews. And that was interesting with Flip Gordon. Yeah, I mean, my one that got away was Jeff Jarrett. I was so close to getting Jeff Jarrett, so close. And then it just, we set up a date and a time and stuff, and I had his information, and it just didn't happen. I mean, I had Tyler Rex on there. I did Lance Archer. I've interviewed Lance Archer, and it's just mad. You just look at all the people now, and where they are, and oh man, it's just mad. And I think I might even just kind of go through at some point, kind of go through some of my interviews, and I don't know. I thought about whether to do some form of an archive, kind of episode, and just kind of or just give them to someone else to do a little added segment if they wanted to kind of just replay some old old interviews. But yeah, man, it was a massive time for me, a very important time, and I loved every minute of it.
Jeff Jarrett, I mean, you almost got Jeff Jarrett, one of the absolute best, WWE Hall of Famer, WWF, WCW, TNA. Again, that was one that you came so close on, right?
Yeah, man, so close. I had his information, everything. We set a date, and it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen, and it was big for me because I enjoyed making my signature kind of intros for the show, and Jeff Jarrett, like one of my things I always used to kind of take from Jeff Jarrett was Slapnuts, and like I loved it. So to get him on would have been amazing, but it just didn't kind of pan out. But with that being said, I enjoyed every interview I did. I learned every I learned from every interview, and yeah, man, I just still can't believe it's so surreal that the amount of people I ended up interviewing and the amount of superstars who are big in the WWE right now who I interviewed. It's crazy when I think about it. But yeah, like I mentioned, previously, I've got all of my interviews there archived, and if any one of you guys want them to kind of use for archive or just kind of put out there, I'm more than happy for you guys to take it. But it's just it's great to think back to those to those times and those interviews.
Now, you talk about, here's the funny thing, because when I first started getting like the big ones, like Kid Cash, Lance Hoyt, who is now with Lance Archer AEW with Jake the Snake Roberts. I mean, there's like Alicia Toot, Killer Cross. I mean, there's so many people. Brian Pillman Jr., who you've also had on the show as well. So there's a lot of similarities between you and I. But I think the first one that I got was like, I know you interviewed Evan Courageous too, right? Of 3 Count?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that was like one of my first wrestling ones I did was with Evan Courageous of 3 Count before I started getting to a lot of the wrestling ones. And that's the thing, though, because you mentioned that was very cool. Because, I mean, independent circuits, I mean, in the Northeast, like your New York Wrestling Connections, where guys like Hawkins and Ryder and a lot of talent came from that area. So I always loved like giving back to the indies because, I mean, there's a lot of great stars on the independent circuit to speak. So I think that's where you got to start. I mean, with the indies, and then you can make your way up. So I think I like the way how you progress, like going from indies to the stars that we see on today.
Yeah, it was really important to kind of get them just before, like, you can hear that, because I used to, obviously, you read the dirt sheets and kind of, you hear things about certain wrestlers in the dirt sheets and you're like, ooh, they're gonna get picked up at some point. They're gonna get picked up, so you just kind of start to interview them. It was the same, when I found out that Brian Pillman Jr. was, going with Rick Rogers and he's starting to wrestle, and I was like, ooh, like I need to actually try and get this guy, because that would be a coup. He's training, he's learning to wrestle. This would be the ideal time to do it. He's not associated with anyone. And it's the same with Alpha Female. She was doing so much abroad. And it was just so good to be able to get someone who I thought, oh, if she gets picked up by WWE, she's going to be huge. And it was just such a thing. So yeah, it's important to kind of look at who was on the cusp of making it, and kind of getting in there just before they kind of, WWE put shackles on them.
You know what's funny is too, that's right. Alpha Female, Jazzy Gabbert from NXT UK. That was another one too, because I remember she did like a very brief run in TNA, and then
Mm.
she was doing a lot of great work on, in the UK, and then there she is on NXT UK. That's right. I'm glad that you brought up Alpha Female because she was also one that I did enjoy from the Mae Young Classic onward.
Yeah, good times, man, good times.
All right. Now, one thing I got to mention as well is like I remember when I got okay. So you want to talk about people on the cusp? So I remember when I interviewed like Kelly Klein, for instance, right? So that
Mm.
was like 2016, 2017. You and I actually talked about this because I'm like, dude, like Ring of Honor, like she was starting to get into her group with Ring of Honor at the time, and I'm like, this is actually very cool. But then you know what I always like to research too as well. Like I'm all about
Mm.
research and just
Yeah.
history. But I'm like, God dang, I didn't realize like she was trained by Les Thatcher. She's worked over here. She's worked over there. I'm like, and that's cool. And you get to learn stuff as you're going along too.
That's the thing. Yeah, you learn things you just never knew, especially when you pick it up from your research, because you want to have a compelling interview. You want to make sure you touch up on everything that you can, and you're knowledgeable about these things, and it's not just hearsay and all these things, and the way you phrase your questions to get the full story about certain things. And that was the great thing as well, was giving them the opportunity to kind of, talk about certain things that they never talked about before. Yeah, it's one of the things I think. The one from experience, one that kind of shines out more is when I interviewed, Thea Trinidad, who was Zelina Vega in WWE right now, and she mentioned, I in the research I found out that her father, died in 9/11, and you just don't know whether it's okay to discuss that. So I had a phone call with her before we actually went on air and just said, look, is it okay to talk about it? And she took a lot of pride in the fact that her father is part of that, and that all the help that she does for charity in terms of 9/11 and things like that. So it was such a inspirational interview. But yeah, like you said, research is key, and you learn so much about these people.
God dang, man. I remember. You know what's funny is I forgot what TNA pay per view it was, but yeah, they actually honored the victims at with a 9/11. Like that's the thing too, because like she's talked about it on WWE, but yeah, like I can't even imagine that because as someone, from New York, 9/11, my aunt was like a couple buildings down from when, the World Trade Center and all that went down. So I'm like, yeah, man, that's very impactful. And it's, something that really just takes a hold on your life.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you, man. But yeah, finding out stuff like that and finding out great research going into interviews is really what encompasses you as the interviewer that you are. I got to ask you something else here, Mr. Kinny Killa, because I'm doing a lot of work now with Andre Corbill, and you and Andre Corbill have a little bit of history. I mean, Bill Apter, One Wrestling. Can you talk about that experience, sir?
Oh man, that was again, that was very, very interesting. Because the stuff with One Wrestling, Bill Apter, Billy Ray, Big Ray, Fame Black, Andre Corbill, Anthony Quintana, like all those guys, Track Brown. That came about because, again, doing research on Twitter and finding out more about these guys that have other podcasts, and that's the thing. It was about getting in touch with other people who have podcasts, making a connection, and then kind of guesting on each one. And over there, obviously, Bill Apter's massive, and I thought that there was an opportunity again to kind of link up there, and those guys loved what I did, and they loved my cadence, and to have a British guy on their show, they just felt that it would just be a really really good. So that's that's what's happened there. And then after a while, and kind of building a relationship with the guys, they introduced me to Bill, and what they wanted to do was for me to run a separate show for One Wrestling, which was aimed at New Japan. And yeah, just kind of giving an update there on New Japan, and an update in the latest stuff that was happening there. And man, it was such a good learning experience to be able to have a show, based on One Wrestling, and being kind of looked upon by Bill Apter as something, the content that he wanted from myself. So it was very humbling, and it was a really, really good experience. And again, having Andre on the show and being on his shows and stuff. And yeah, he's a really quirky guy, man, a really nice guy, a workaholic, always trying to make sure that he's kind of available and promoting other people as well as himself. So yeah, got a lot of time and a lot of love for that guy.
That's the thing too, and I joke with Andre because he has that voice. Ladies and gentlemen, wrestling fans tuning in worldwide. So I mean, but with Andre, like you mentioned, workaholic. I mean, a dude like you guys talk about Bill Apter. I mean, the man, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I remember seeing him doing a lot of old school photography along with Paul Heyman at Madison Square Garden that we've seen that's been documented in Paul Heyman's DVD for WWE. So it's great just to see like Andre just do his thing from working with Vince Russo, working with One Wrestling, and just the overall work. And I think a lot of people don't give Andre a lot of credit because he like friggin' kills it. And you know what I'm saying? I mean, we've seen it with we've interviewed him for Max in the Hot Seat back in 2016. Daz and Butcher did. He just did a promo battle with Travis the Walker Anderson last year, promo series. The guy has a mind and he's very knowledgeable, Kenny.
Yeah, no, very, very knowledgeable, very, very, and I still kind of, check out those guys and see what they're doing and making sure that everyone's okay, and they're what their views are on the business at the moment, because the business has changed so much over the last couple of years, so it's always good to find out the views of of your peers.
Now I'm curious because you also mentioned the business has changed. I mean, WWE, Ring of Honor, New Japan, which, by the way, on a side note, that's why I also hate, and sometimes I always go in the trivia with, oh, here comes the New Japan question. Of course, Kenny's going to know it. But I also have to thank you for that. And I joke about it with you because you're actually the one that introduced New Japan to us on Max there, because we knew about New Japan. We'd watch like a little bit of it, but we weren't as hooked as we were with the Wrestle Kingdoms like you were. So we got to thank you for the New Japan knowledge as well.
No problem, man. Yeah, I think a lot of us, a lot of the crew, especially the Sunday Segue contingent, were late to New Japan, and it was just, so I think it's just a culture thing, we're not, it's something that we're not used to watching, and then you get into it and you realize, actually, I've missed out on a lot, and I'm just glad I got into it when I did, and I'm glad, I kept knocking on that door with Daz. I kept saying, mate, you need to watch this, you need to watch this, and then finally they watched it, and it was just like, yes, mate, now you know what you've been missing out, and then the rest, the rest is kind of history.
Exactly. And I got to say, people, if you want to see a badass photo, your photo with Nakamura is still one of my favorite photos.
Dude, man, when I think about, like, now we're going over this and I'm in the hot seat and I'm re-looking back on my podcasting career and in wrestling, and looking at the people I've interviewed, the people I've met, the friends I've made, and just the wrestlers I've even met, and going to, going to wrestling shows with the Segheads. I mean, that show is such a big show, that I went to with Rev Pro, and it meant so. It's so dear to my heart because that was the very first meetup with the Segheads that we all went to a wrestling show together, enjoyed the show. We all got to meet like AJ Styles, we got to meet Nakamura, got to meet Okada, got to meet Tanahashi, got to meet Liger, Carl Anderson, and Luke Gallows. We got to meet all those guys, and it was the first time we were meeting each other, and it was like we've always known each other. So that picture, it means a lot.
I gotta say, well, that's a beautiful thing, man. You get to meet up with people at professional wrestling events and get to meet, just overall. I think a lot of people don't realize like the professional wrestling experience live is absolutely amazing. I'll be honest, the first ever wrestling event I went to was 2002 at the Continental Airlines Arena at the time. That was actually when Eric Bischoff became the general manager of Raw. So I got to be, yeah, so that was my first ever wrestling experience. Like I've always said, I've gotten to the game late. Like I knew about wrestling as a kid, but I didn't start watching it until like 2002 when John Cena, Randy Orton, Batista, and Brock Lesnar were all on the come up. So yeah, my first event was that. Now here's something that'll like blow your mind here. So first event was that. My first pay-per-view event was SummerSlam 2002, which a lot of people consider one of the best pay-per-views of that year, with Brock Lesnar and The Rock, Shawn Michaels coming back. And then I got the chance to go to a Survivor Series with the first ever Elimination Chamber, Brock and Big Show. So it was a hell of a time for professional wrestling, Kenny.
Yeah, man, that year. And that year, you know what? It's synonymous for me as well because it's the year I left school, and that's the year which I stopped watching wrestling for a year, and I regret it so much. I like because looking back on it now and kind of going, retrospectively watching it and thinking to myself why I missed, summer, all that whole year, which was such a big year, man, and I missed it. But luckily, with the wrestling how it is, you get to go back and you can watch these things and catch up. But yeah, man, what 2 shows to go to?
I know, and that's the thing too. Like a lot of people don't realize. Like, I mean, people call it the Ruthless Aggression era, but it was a hell of a time for professional wrestling. And then we got to see what they did on the network with the, culminating with the Ruthless Aggression era. But what's cool about it is too, we talk about wrestling nowadays. So I gotta ask you. We mentioned WWE, Ring of Honor. There's alternatives. There's a lot of great professional wrestling that's out there today, Kenny. AEW is now there, so I got to ask you, what are your thoughts on AEW and the crux that we see now at the NXT AEW on Wednesdays, and we get to see a lot of professional wrestling on Wednesday nights?
Okay, so NXT. I mean, I was watching FCW, so you know what I mean. So I knew everything there was to know about the transition from FCW to NXT. So I followed these guys, from Roman Reigns was Lieki, and I followed all of these guys, so then when NXT became like proper NXT, not NXT 2010 when they're kind of doing the madness. I'm talking like NXT 2012 when it was proper NXT, and I realized, okay, now we're going to see these guys, your Richie Steamboats and your Nevilles, your Packs and stuff. Like we're going to actually see them now in NXT on an actual show and how they're going to format it. It was so exciting, and I've been a massive NXT mark, since it began. So now, looking at what they're doing, going head to head with AEW, it was inevitable that something like that was going to happen because Triple H is gonna put his money where his mouth is, and he's gonna put his talent up against the best, and he wants to push the talent to make sure that they know what it is to be pushed. They know what it's like to be pushed, and although WWE will say that they don't see AEW as as competition, which they're right to say because of how big they are. It's an interesting time because now there's someone who owns a football club over here, who has the money in the bankroll to be able to do something like this. And when I heard AEW was starting to form, and the guys that were involved, I thought, oh, this is going to be very interesting because the knock-on effect, the domino effect that had with the affiliation with ROH and New Japan and everyone just moving kind of sideways. ROH hasn't been the same since, and it's such a massive thing. So now, adding Jim Ross to it, and adding other guys, and old WWE guys kind of going there. I I have high hopes for AEW for sure. When it comes to head with NXT, I'm always going to back NXT because that's something that I followed for a very long time. Doesn't mean that I'm not interested in AEW, and I do watch it, and I think it's a good. I think it's a good promotion. It's well run. I like the way that they're doing, the no scripts and giving people just maybe bullet points or letting them, do their own promos, because it shows realness within their characters and with the people they're trying to portray. And I think that sometimes they do some rookie things, where it comes to certain shots and too many spot fesses. And for me, certain matches that people are high on, sometimes I'm not high on, because I feel like they're just doing things just to do them. Certain comedy spots that don't need to be in there, and certain, kind of high spots just don't need to be in there. But all in all, I think it's a good promotion. I think it's a good product. I think they're gonna keep growing and growing, and it's going to be interesting to see once the novelty wears off. They've got their hardcores, but it's about the new fans. And if they can embrace the new fans, and if they can be so different to WWE, I think they're onto a good thing. I definitely think they're onto a good thing.
Oh, and you said it best with like the scripts, and it's authentic, man, and just being real and giving, like you mentioned, the bullet points. And I'll be honest with you, as a wrestling fan, there's a lot of the spot fests, and dare I say, excuse my language, it's kind of a clusterfuck at times when you see a lot of those spots. But I mean, I think it's great for a lot of people to get their foot in the door with AEW, All Elite Wrestling, and you get to see a lot of great talents in there, from Cody Rhodes, from Darby Allin, the Young Bucks, LAX, Santana, and Ortiz, who are now Proud and Powerful. So I mean, there's a lot. It's a lot of great talent there, as well as new people to come into for another for another company as well. Like, I'll be honest, Kristen Statlander, trained by Kurt Hawkins, created Pro Wrestling. For me, I remember watching her stuff from, she did an Impact Twitch show, AML Confrontation, had the chance to interview around that time period. But to see how she's grown, I mean, she did an extra spot on WWE where she was in a tag match with the Iconics and being one of the focal points of the AEW women's division. So I think that's cool. And also with her character, you look at a person with the alien, like she's into astrology. So she took herself and how she is as a person, and she upped the level with the character. I mean, look at Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was the ringmaster. Then he just let him be himself, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Same with The Rock. If you have that person just be themselves but turn the volume up, it's wonderful, and they'll do wonders.
I think AEW, if they take bits from other promotions, like for instance with TNA and what they did with building a nucleus of guys, this is at the beginning with building a nucleus with your AJ Styles and your Christopher Daniels and Chris Sabins and your James Storms and stuff. You had your nucleus, you had guys that they built up from nothing to something, and then then they added in the old WWE guys, but that got a bit too repetitive. So if AEW built this stuff around guys like Darby Allin, you know what I mean? Like, we're in 2020, and you're straight edge and you're kind of steampunk, and like, it's that we're in that era. And to build something around Darby Allin, as whether he's a mid-card guy or whatever, like, that's something that you need. You got your Moxley, but one thing I just hope that they don't do too much is, obviously there's gonna be people that are coming from WWE who are looking for jobs, and I just don't want them to overpopulate themselves with those guys. I want them to look at the guys, look at the potential they have, and look at the characters they may be able to portray on TV as so different to their WWE characters, and get over, and give them the opportunity to get over. As they've done with Pac. They got Pac in the time where he had gone away from WWE for a good year and a half, 2 years, Dragon Gate, built on his persona, and then AEW got him in at the right time where he's gone so far away from WWE. It's, who even remembers him in WWE? You know what I mean? So,
No, I'm just saying, Kenny, I get it, because I'll be honest, is watching him from when he was feuding with goddamn Enzo Amore, excuse my language, but it's just like with Pac, I was always a fan, like when he was teamed with Oliver Gray, teamed with Corey Graves and NXT Tag Team Championships. You know where I'm going with this. NXT Championship, the ladder match with Bo Dallas. Like, I loved Neville, and then we got to see him on the main roster, and he had the cape and the whole nine. I remember the match with Stephen Amell, I believe it was SummerSlam, with him and Cody and King Barrett at the time. But I'm just like, God dang, man, there's more you could do. That's why I love when he was in the cruiserweight division and what happened with that. And then getting to see him on AEW, one of the focal points, doing his thing with Kenny Omega, being a part of the Black Triangle, I believe it is now, the Death Triangle with Pentagon and Phoenix. Like, there's so many ways that you could go with this. And like you mentioned with the WWE talent coming in, like a lot of people want to see Rusev go there. But that's the thing, man. How many former WWE people are we going to get here? And so we don't turn into WCW 2.0, if that makes any sense. Because like you mentioned, you don't want to overpopulate with the WWE talent.
Yeah, Rusev could be big in AEW, but you know what? I think Rusev could be even bigger in New Japan.
Exactly. And I think he would have a great run there in New Japan. You could build him up. I mean, there's so many championships there, from the Never Openweight Championship, the IWGP Championship, the Intercontinental Championship. So I think he would have a great time in that division.
100%.
Now, Mr. Kinny Killa, I got to say this about you, because we've been shooting the breeze on a lot of professional wrestling. I got to ask you, because we did mention one in there. You talked about TNA. For me, I watch a lot of companies, and I enjoy what I watch, man. Now, here in the States, we get Impact on Access TV. I got to ask you, have you been keeping up with the Impact Wrestling side of things?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm not even gonna lie. Not at all. I got in. I watched TNA from the beginning, 2002, probably all the way up until maybe 2006.
Mhm.
I think 2006, 2007, maybe 2008, and then I just stopped altogether. So I haven't really been keeping an eye on it as much as I used to.
Be honest with you, don't. Here's where I say be honest with you, don't worry about it, because here's the thing. I grew up as a TNA fan in 2004. Now, I think for me, because I missed out on NWA TNA like 2002, 2003, right? So 2004 is actually a very good time to start watching that, because you had the second anniversary special, which was my first special, Jeff Hardy's debut against AJ Styles for the X Division Championship. And 2004 is when Impact, the show, came into fruition. And then you got to see, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, Unbreakable 2005. And then they started getting the ball rolling on Spike TV. And obviously management changes over the years, but I got to say, watching it now, there's a lot of interesting stuff on in there as well. Like Tessa Blanchard is the first ever female world heavyweight champion on the show. You get to see people like Michael Elgin and Eddie Edwards. You get to see a lot of different tag teams like the North, Josh Alexander and Ethan Page. So I mean, it's a lot of new crop of talent, and I mean, I want to see them flourish, and I want to see them succeed. But I got to say this, man, as someone who has been watching since 04, you definitely see the changes. And I'll be honest, because when you said 08, 09, it made me laugh, Kenny, because that was probably the year that I kind of stopped buying the pay-per-views. And my dad was like, no, my dad and I, like I said, I love my dad. I love my folks, because my dad was a big wrestling fan. We had a family friend that was a big wrestling fan. So that's who really got me into it. But yeah, around 2008, 2009, we kind of stopped getting the pay-per-views. So that made me when you said that.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, yeah, TNA is not something I'm watching at the moment, but I keep an eye on MLW. I as soon as because I listen to Court Bauer a lot, because obviously I listened to Post Wrestling, and when it was the Law and stuff, and they always had Court Bauer on, and so I've known Court Bauer. I've known about Court Bauer for a long time, and when I found out he was bringing MLW back, because I know he did it previously, I didn't watch it previously, but when I heard he was bringing it back, I thought, ooh, okay, this is interesting. But then I found out they had a spot on UK TV on Free Sport. And when I found that out, I was like, okay, I'm definitely gonna be watching this now. So I recorded, man, and when I found out, obviously, Brian Pillman Jr. Got signed to MLW, and Teddy Hart was there and stuff. I was like, yeah, I need to see the new crop. I need to see these guys. It's where I first got introduced to Ace Austin. I know Ace Austin's on Impact now, and I thought he had a good gimmick with the magician stuff, and so that was cool. I mean, I got to see more people like Pentagon and on there, and Ray Phoenix, Ray Horace, and those guys. Yeah, MJ. Oh, that was my first introduction to MJF, and I thought this guy is gonna be something now. He's gonna be the best heel in the world. Like, this guy is gonna, and it was such a nice kind of learning curve for him to be in MLW and kind of get that exposure. I mean, this is why I think that with Brian Pillman Jr. being there, and Harry Smith being there to support him, it's perfect. It's perfect. And yeah, man, MLW, I've got a lot of time for that promotion, man. Definitely.
Here in the States, what's amazing, because that's where I also first got introduced to MJF. Like, again, being a New Yorker, I've gotten the chance to see him live at the New York Wrestling Connection. Because okay, so for people that don't know, in New York, the New York Wrestling Connection on Long Island was in Deer Park. So Deer Park, where I lived, it was about 15 minutes from my house. So going to see local wrestling on a Saturday night was awesome. And you got to see people like MJF, Alex Reynolds, and John Silver, who are now on AEW with the Dark Order. You got to see a lot of people that came from there. Bull James. I mean, the list goes on and on, Kenny. But MJF is one of those guys. I mean, listening to him do an interview with Alicia too. I mean, you got a guy who was influenced by the greats like Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and it shows him, man. He's got the heel mannerisms down pat to a T, and he's just someone that you just want to choke. And that's the thing, man, about evoking emotions in professional wrestling. Like, he is just going to keep continuing to flourish and just going to keep continuing just to succeed, man. I love MJF.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I just hope that Ravishing Recruit, when Ravishing Recruit was, when he started coming into prominence in WWF at the time, he was such a dastardly heel, man. He was such a dastard, but he could back it up in the ring. And MGF is good, but I think he could be even better. And I just wait for that time to see, his star shine even brighter.
And that's the thing, too, man. You mentioned Ravishing Rick Rude. Again, God rest his soul. We're just coming upon the anniversary of his death. But for me, Ravishing Rick Rude and the Ultimate Warrior, Ravishing Rick Rude and WWE, WCW, D-Generation X, of course, having the ladies on his crotch, the whole entrance that he had, Ravishing Rick Rude, one of the absolute best, Hall of Famer indeed. But, dude, I got to say this. The Jake the Snake Roberts feud was the one that really that amped it up for me. I love going back and watching me some Ravishing Rick Rude.
Oh man, yeah, the good old days, man. I just love it. Like, I just love it, and I always go back to, like, when I I want to give a shout out to the OSW guys because Jay Hunter and those guys, the V1. When I look at nostalgia, these guys, like, because they still go back to look at nostalgia, and the way they do the shows and recap the shows is so funny, and I just love it, and it makes me watch such a nostalgic time with a smile on my face. So I got to give a shout out to OSW Review and Jay Hunter, V1, and those guys, OCC, because OOC, sorry, because it's just, they're just bringing back old school wrestling, and making it fun. I don't know if you watch those guys or listen to those guys, but they just make it fun. And I'm tell you now, if you haven't, just go and check out OSW Review. As a guy that loves nostalgia, Mike, OSW Review is the one, man.
Bro, I got to thank you for that recommendation, because now I got to check that out. And that's the thing, man, too, because we get to learn from each other, man. And like I said, hey, if it's a Kinny Killa stamp of approval and if it's a Kinny Killa recommendation, I'm all on it. So thank you for that.
Dude, I will hit you up with the link after we come off the air, because now I'm getting excited, because I know my guy who's into nostalgia like me has never watched this, and he's going to be so gassed about this, like, so I'm excited now that I know that you're going to be watching it.
Bro, I'm a nostalgia guy, man. Like I said, I love old school stuff, and I mean, we get to see that now with actually the current knowledge champion, because Moses Marquez does a lot of retro rewind stuff, and the concept of that. And I'm gonna make you the recommendation, because of course with Max Wrestling, we provide the alternative with trivia, with promo challenges, and we provide a lot of great wrestling analysis. But for you, I'm gonna say this, and I'll send you the link after this. Moses Marquez, check out SoundCloud.com/SmartMarkRadio. They do a show called the Retro Rewind, man, where they cover WCW and they cover WWF at the time, the Monday Night Wars. So I will send you that link as well. Check out Moses Marquez.
Nice, will do.
I got your back, Kenny, but I got to say this about you. Besides the wrestling side of things, and here's where I love you, man. Dadcast with the Mandem. You get to do a lot of great things on the air, and they're on the airwaves, bruh. And you get to see a lot of you guys talking about fatherhood. And I've been on a lot of those live feeds and just saying hello. And I got to say, I really love the work that you're doing with Dadcast and the whole nine there, because for me, it gives us an insight on fatherhood and parenting, and just seeing, because, man, I know you got a beautiful family, you got beautiful kids, and I wish you nothing but love and happiness always on that front. But dude, it gives you great insight on fatherhood. So can you tell us, how did Dadcast with the Mandem come into fruition? Because I love what you're doing.
So it all starts with the end of Sunday Segue, really. When I decided to end Sunday Segue, it was because you have to look at things in terms of return on investment, and I was spending a lot of time by myself doing the show by myself. I had a partner in crime, Shugs, and he kind of, kind of went to one side at one point, which made it difficult for me to just, do the editing and do everything else. So, and that's why I had to kind of reinvent Sunday Segue in a different way, and really kind of look at getting more people on to cover that. But at the same time, it was, return on investment. I was spending too much time doing it once a week, too much time away from the family. And I decided, okay, that needs to stop. And I'm going to do something different. And I want to do something around fatherhood. And I think there's a massive gap here. And that's when, I kind of run the idea past, one of my good friends, Jace Clarkson. We worked together at the time. And I said to him, you know what, I kind of want to do this thing, man. Like I'm going to stop doing Segue, and I want to start talking about fatherhood. And, he's a father as well. He's father of two. And we decided to put this thing together and start doing it. And I mean, at first it just started to be just a YouTube show. Jace had a YouTube show around gaming, and I had the podcast, and we both had expertise around it. So we just decided to do it. And, the YouTube shows then kind of started picking up, and we decided, okay, we now have to do something about this, because we're becoming more of a community initiative. And that's when our partnerships started coming with radio, our local radio station, and then our local one of the community organizations that gives out funding. And the first funding we got funding for £1,000 to help us, do our show. And that allowed us to buy equipment and things like that. And we've been getting funding from them ever since. We're in our third year now. We're now incorporated as a community interest company. And, which means that we're in the space now where if we wanted to pay ourselves, we can. So and it's just evolved from there. It's evolved from a podcast or a YouTube show now to a radio show. We're on BCfm in Bristol with our partners, over at Econ Media. And we also now have a partnership with a local children's scrap store where we run sessions called Dadcraft, which allows fathers to bring their kids down and be recreational together, and kind of create things together. And again, we get paid for doing that. So it's built up nicely, and it's just something I love doing. I love being a father, and I love giving the platform. I love giving fathers the platform to talk about their kids and share their experiences. So yeah, man, it's a lovely thing that we're doing. I can do it, regularly. Radio's once a week on a Monday. It doesn't take too much time up, and our YouTube shows are once a month, and our sessions with the scrap store are once a month. So it doesn't take too much time away from the family. Plus, my kids can get involved because it's obviously around kids. All of our partners, our wives, are involved as well. So it's it's like a family thing. So yeah, I'm very proud of what I've kind of done with Segue, but what I'm currently doing now with Dadcast.
All right. And here's where I got to say this, and I say this with the utmost respect and sincerity with the overall friendship that we had. You son of a bitch. And the reason why I say you son of a bitch, because I'm going to be honest with you. As a podcast, I think you could tell with my work, I like to provide a variety, because I'll be honest with you people, sometimes I just don't want to talk about professional wrestling. I love professional wrestling, but there's more to who you are than just being the professional wrestling fan. That's why I like Dadcast, because you get to help people with fatherhood, and you get to help people with parenthood, and you give advice, and it's for people, and it's lovely, and it's giving back to the people, right? So for me, I love talking about pop culture, because I was a pop culture nerd. I like music, I like movies, I like this. So I wanted to provide a variety with what I'm doing on my network, and I'm just like, people, we could talk. You know what it is too, and I hate the stigma too, is because we're passionate professional wrestling fans. We love professional wrestling, but we can also talk about other stuff, if that makes sense. And it's just like, I like doing pop culture stuff, and I'll be honest with you, I like giving people the platform to tell their story. Like, one of my favorite interviews was interviewing Kim Coffey, because there was this girl that I went to high school with. She passed away days before her prom from meningeal disease, meningitis, and I'm like, giving her the platform to talk about this foundation that she has and raising awareness for meningitis is awesome, because I think it's other avenues to explore, and that's why I like the avenue that you've explored with Dadcast and what you guys are doing on the radio, because I can listen to that, and somebody who's a new father or someone who's going through some stuff with their parenthood and whatnot, you guys can provide advice and help people with that sort of thing, man.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Like it was just realizing as a father that there's a massive gap. There's a massive gap, and it's needed. And that's the thing as well with looking at moving from Segue to Dadcast, because there's a million podcasts. There's a million wrestling podcasts.
Yep.
And, we had a niche group. We had a great group. We had a nice kind of pool of fans and listeners that we had. But it could only go so far, and there wasn't that much with the effort that I was putting into it and the amount of time I was putting into it. I didn't feel like there was a return on investment. There was, in terms of friends and, helping others and the kind of network I created out of that, and seeing how other people have progressed out of that. But apart from that, monetary wise and kind of not status, but being able to move on to other things wise, that didn't happen. But with Dadcast, there's a gap there. We've built partnerships. We're getting paid for work that we're doing. We're doing partnership with loads of different people. We're hosting events. It's loads of different things. And it's more of a realistic thing, which isn't as niche, so and that's the thing. It's you have to make hard decisions when you're doing things like this. And Dadcast is a business now, and it's you have to make hard decisions. And moving from Segue to Dadcast was the correct move for me at the time.
See, that's the thing with me too, because like besides wrestling and stuff, like I was telling you this because a lot of people know this now. I do a lot of work with LFC Lingerie Fighting Championships. I'm part of the social media team. I do management, and you and I were talking about this, and I'm like, Kenny, I wanted to give people a platform, and that's why I named the show Beauty, Strength, and Dominance, which is the three key elements that make women the work of art that they are. I have the chance to provide female empowerment, and also just because my mother is one of my biggest influences, and my grandmother is, God rest her soul. So I wanted to do a podcast where it helps women and empowers them for who they are. And I'll be honest with you, is it great to be around beautiful women in lingerie? Of course it is. It's sexy, from the physical standpoint and the overall appearance of the women. But, if you can understand where I'm coming from, there's more to that. It's not just about the physical side. It's about getting into their hearts. You know what I'm saying? The platform to tell their story, like we've said in this show. And it really gets to show just like, it's a different alternative with mixed martial arts and women's mixed martial arts. It's still badass and they kick butt, but they're in lingerie. So I wanted to provide people that aspect. And I think I love what I'm doing, man, just providing that empowerment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and good for you, because again, you notice that there was an opportunity there to use your skills to benefit others in a different area and a different sport, and it's allowed you to kind of go into a different avenue, still loving to do the wrestling stuff, but now you're making movements in other circles that can hopefully help propel you into different areas and different things. So I have to, when I found out that that's what you were doing, and I had to ask more about it because it's interesting. It's different than what we normally do. So so good for you.
Yeah, that's the thing too, and a lot of people don't realize. By the way, if you go, and I'll send you the link, but they're actually Mia Yim and Sienna under different monikers were actually a part of LFC back in the day. So if you want to see some hot lingerie wearing for Mia Yim and Sienna, it's there as well. And that's the thing, like you get to learn a lot of aspects about it. And me, I was also a mixed martial arts fan. I mean, there's a lot of wrestling. That's the thing, a lot of people don't realize like the tie-in and correlations with mixed martial arts and pro wrestling, from your Ken Shamrocks and someone who you got to interview, which was another big one that I enjoyed, Dan Severn. And Dan the Beast Severn, and women's mixed martial arts with the Ronda Rouseys, the Shayna Baszlers, the Jessamine Dukes, and every one of the 4 MMA horsewomen who were in the WWE. And you get to just, pick your brain into a different field. And I've always respected combative nature. I remember watching boxing as a kid, and my grandfather, God rest his soul, sitting on his lap. So it always interested me. So it gets, you have to pick your brain and learn stuff about the MMA and a little bit of the boxing and different, styles of combat there, Mr. Kinny Killa. So I think it's cool.
It's definitely cool, man. It's funny because when I think about how we're addicted to wrestling, it's something that we grew up with, and it's something that will never shift. And it's funny how that has allowed us to be even more passionate and addictive in other areas as well. And wrestling has paved the way for a lot of things that we're currently doing now, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Me either. And I also have a couple final things I want to ask you, which, Kenny, I got to say this, man. We got to do more of these in the future, just more shows together. Dude, I love you. You're one of my, I'm going to say this, you're one of my mentors. Your dad's mentor, Butcher. You've helped us along the way, and I got to say I thank you for that, man. I love just, having you on just to shoot the breeze and just to talk to you outside of this. So I got to say I appreciate you, and thank you for your time today.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'm always about, and that's the thing. I want people to know, don't get it twisted. Like, I don't do a wrestling podcast anymore, but that doesn't mean I stop talking about wrestling. So I'm still here. I'm still about. Thank you for, for you guys for getting me on your shows and being able to be involved and see your growth. So yeah, anytime, just let me know, and I'll always be there for you guys.
All right, couple final things. One thing I have to say is what we found out last year in Iron Bank, we found out that you and former promo champion Amir Blackbane Costello love Darkwing Duck. Let's get dangerous. So I think so I figure you, the three of us, can do a pop culture show on the Darkwing Duck in the future. So we'll do that because you guys got me hooked on some Darkwing Duck, and I love you both for that because that song is so great. But another thing I got to mention is, so at Max Wrestling, we provide the alternative from the knowledge standpoint and the promo championship with that being back. So I got to ask you, Phoenix is in this. Our own Phoenix from a video and visual standpoint doing some promos. We have former WSU Tag Team Champion Brittany Savage, who teamed with AJ Lee, is in this promo league. And we have a lot of great people on the come up, like Amir and our current champion, who is the Demoness, Nicola McDonald. So I got to ask you, sir, Mr. Slapnuts, Mr. Kinny Killa that you are, my brother, would a promo league or a promo style competition interest you for the future? Because we got a lot of stuff going on, Max, and I wanted to ask you, get your thoughts on that.
Well, I did speak to Daz about the promo stuff. He did let me know about the Knowledge Championship and also about the promo stuff. And to be fair, I did decline the promo stuff because I kind of wanted to step away from that area of the kind of things that you guys were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I did really feel that I could do it justice. Knowledge will be there forever. So I, kind of definitely threw my name in the hat when it comes to the Knowledge Championship. But yeah, I think it's a great thing that you guys are doing, especially with the promo league and getting more people involved. Because the more people involved, it means the more that they can promote that, and the more they can promote Max Wrestling. So yeah, I enjoy what you guys are doing, and I just think that you guys are being really creative and kind of using your initiative to move in different areas and different directions. So yeah, well done to you guys, man.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. I appreciate the input. But one other thing before I have you promote the social medias and Dadcast and the whole nine, Kenny, I love asking this because you're a veteran and you do a lot of great work from Dadcast, from Sunday Segue that you did, and you have just had an amazing, amazing career in your overall field. So I ask you, Mr. Kinny Killa, what advice would you give for people that want to start getting into podcasting and doing the radio stuff like you're doing? What advice would you give them?
Okay, so do something you love. Okay, do something you love. You're really passionate about. You can start it by yourself. Get others involved. Reach out to other people. If it's as niche as what wrestling is, reach out to other people because they will be happy to be in touch with someone who is like-minded like them, and being given the opportunity. So reach out to others, and just reach out to other podcasts as well to learn. To learn new things. That's how I got started. I reached out to a lovely, lovely woman in the States called Sierra Reed. And she was the one that helped us start Sunday Segue, man. She gave us a lot of advice. And I would definitely say reach out. I'm available. You can get me at Kinny Killa on Twitter. I'm available if anyone wants, needs some support or guidance or even just to help get things started, like I did with you guys. I'm always about to help. But yeah, just make sure you get the right equipment, get the right people involved, and just be passionate about what it is that you're doing. Don't worry if it's as niche as it is, and it doesn't matter, because if it's niche, there's still going to be other people interested in what you're doing as well. And sometimes it's better in a smaller circle, with if it's niche. So yeah, just like I said, get the right equipment, get the right people involved, get in touch with people, and doesn't matter whether you're afraid or whether you don't know whether you can do it. Start somewhere. Our first episode was nuts. I listened to it back the other day, and it was mad, from where we started to where we ended up. So you have to start somewhere. So yeah, that's my advice.
Same thing. Before you, no, because you see, you segued, pun intended here, because when I first listened back to my shows from 2015, it's rough. But people, I think the best thing to say is if you're podcasting and you're starting out, the best way to, I think Daz has mentioned this, and I think you've told Daz, the best way to keep, to get better podcasting is just by keep doing it.
Yeah. I remember Daz, he was nervous as hell, man. Oh man, he barely spoke when he first came on. He was nervous, man. But well, you see him now. Look at him now. Like, rest is history.
Yeah, and the Facebook views. I mean, 10K, man. Can you believe that? I mean, friggin' people just clicking on Facebook. 10K, Kenny.
Amazing. Better than we ever could do. So I'm very happy for him, man.
Me too. So, Kinny Killa, you mentioned the Twitter at Kinny Killa. Please promote the Instagrams as well. Dadcast, man. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, you can get me this at Kinny Killa on Twitter. That's my personal Twitter. For Dadcast, it's at Dadcast WTMD on all socials. That's Facebook. That's also Instagram, and that's also Twitter. And on YouTube to get our monthly shows. They're timeless, so they're on different. Based on different things. Our first episode was on sleep, and then it goes on to do from pregnancy from a father's perspective. So there's loads and loads of different themes. So you can go on to YouTube and find us at www.youtube.com/Dadcast with the Mandem.
Dadcast with the Mandem Sunday Segue. Check out Kinny Killa on Max Wrestling. And dude, you're Max Wrestling OG, and that's why I always will define you, because you've always been on so many Max Wrestlings as well. And I got to say this about you. So if you win the Knowledge Championship, besides being 3-time and I'm the Iron Bank winner, I'm going to steal a line from someone I know, that being you. I'm coming for you, bro.
Yeah, I welcome it, bro. I welcome it.
All right. The feud will continue. The friendship never ends. Kinny Killa, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.